What it is, it's your guy Neo Nest back again with another video. And if you're new to the channel, we discuss all things video games and Neo Geo. And today we're talking about 5 games on the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One physical that you can find that are made from SNK, the popular publisher that's made many of the Neo Geo games that I've played on my Neo Geo AES. So let's check out the top 5 games, or the only 5 games that are still made from a physical standpoint on the Xbox platform. Starting us off at number 1, we have King of Fighters XII. This is literally the 12th installment of King of Fighters, popular fighting game, and this one came out in 2009. So in terms of physical, where can you find this game? You can find this game on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. Now, to note, King of Fighters 12 doesn't really have a storyline. Now, as it sits, the King of Fighters games compiles all the major fighters. Most of the characters inside of King of Fighters come from SNK's most popular games. Majority-wise are coming from fighting games, but you have a couple others from Metal Slug, etc. that pop in from time to time throughout the series. And then you've got dedicated characters that come in specifically from the King of Fighters standpoint. Now, as it sits, there's 2 other King of Fighters games that you can actually find digitally on the Xbox, and that's King of Fighters 98 and then King of Fighters 2002. These are 2 other games that kind of follow the same format for King of Fighters 12 with no storyline. So in terms of this game, this has new sprite capabilities, so this is a big shift in terms of the animation of the sprite, the fighting animation on the game, versus some of the older King of Fighters where we saw kind of a recycle over year after year after year, and really just the gameplay was just tweaked here, music was changed here, background animation was made better here, and then maybe we saw a little bit of a refresh with the sprites. But when we shift over to King of Fighters 12, we really see this get pumped up a lot. The arcade version of this game comes with 20 playable KOF competitors, and a lot of these characters were featured in King of Fighters 2003, but we also see a couple of other ones that make a new introduction here. So in terms of this game, this is not a bad fighting game by any means, and if you're a big King of Fighters fan and you were looking for a big refresh after, you know, King of Fighters 2003 and some of the earlier titles that we found on older consoles, this one is going to be a little bit more refreshing. But moving into our next game, we follow up 2 years later with King of Fighters XIII. Now, this one actually does pick up more of a storyline base of the game. You could find this on Xbox 360, you can find it on PlayStation 3, iOS, Android, Microsoft Windows. This actually there was a version that was made for Nintendo Switch, and then also there's been some remakes. I think Limited Run has some remakes going on right now, like an Ultimate Online Edition for PlayStation 4. So this game is still getting remastered a little bit, but in terms of comparisons between 12 and 13, if it was me, I would lean more towards 13. 13's a little bit more polished. They got rid of a few little bugs here and there. Online capability with this game is there. So overall, this game is a little bit better in terms of it. And of course, Atlas covered this game. So from a US perspective, that's cool. If you know Atlas games, they can do no wrong. The game's events, the events of this game in terms of the storyline, continue after, well, King of Fighters 11. So this is kind of a conclusion to that story arc, which originally started in King of Fighters 2003, and then it's really concluded here in King of Fighters 13. So yeah, not bad. It's not a bad game at all. This game removes some of King of Fighters in 12's mechanics. So more like the guard attack, the critical counter, the clash system, as well as the dynamic and zoom cameras. And in place, it introduces the new EX mode, the EX special moves. So it kind of gives more of that Street Fighter vibe, if you will, in terms of like the EX moves and cross counters and cancel drives, etc. So they're really making this game more on a competitive fighting game standpoint, and we see it in later versions of King of Fighters once we move into the modern consoles, the more current gen consoles right now with King of Fighters 14, 15, etc. These games are great. So King of Fighters 13, awesome game. So there was the console version got some updates. So it received a patch from the arcade version, and then of course it had the added story mode that influenced player actions and various perspectives being available. So you'll see once the fight starts, there's commentary going back and forth between the characters, which kind of is real reminiscent of kind of the back and forth between characters in SVC Chaos. We saw that with a lot of the cross commentary between characters from Capcom and SNK. We saw a lot of that instead of it just saying, fight, begin. You know, we didn't see a lot of that. We saw more commentary to kind of build more of a story like that. I like that they added that in this game. It is the last game in the story arc from King of Fighters 13, and in terms of the story, I'm not going to spoil it for you. It's over the course of 3 games. I mean, it's not super granular. I mean, in terms of story-based fighting games, this one, King of Fighters hasn't always been a story that, to me, in my personal opinion, doesn't have a lot of depth in terms of the story like you would find in something like a Mortal Kombat or a Tekken, but it keeps you engaged and it keeps you progressing to like, okay, well, why do I want to buy another King of Fighters game? Because King of Fighters games at one point were coming out every year or every other year. It was almost like the 2K of fighting games at one point, but now we're getting them in smaller chunks with SNK now, and we're seeing 15, and 15 is a great game, awesome game. And if you haven't played 15, you're really seeing the polished foundation of that game in 13. You really start seeing like what SNK's branching and starting to level and move towards. And they really start that once they move into KOF 14 and 15. We saw more 3D renderings, and we went away from the sprite animations like Street Fighter did. Like, I mean, Mortal Kombat's always been there, and of course Tekken's been in that space. But once Street Fighter shifted over into the 3D, that's when SNK was like, okay, it's time for us to make the change. It's time for us to make things a little bit less animated and more realistic in a way in terms of the presentation of the game. Those are the only 2 King of Fighters that will be on this list from a 360 perspective. And then lastly, for the 360, we have Samurai Shodown Sin, as this one can only be found on Xbox. That's right, you have a 360 version only found on Xbox of Samurai Shodown Sin. And I actually found my copy at a local bookstore actually, Half Price Books. So when I saw this just sitting on the shelf, I had been looking for this game for a long time, didn't want to go on eBay and buy it, and I found it. I swooped that thing up so quickly. So this game is the 4th 3D game that was produced by SNK Playmore, and it was the Samurai Shodown, and it's the 11th overall title for Samurai Shodown. In some countries you may see it as Edge of Destiny. In the 360 we saw it as Samurai Shodown Sin, and this game takes place between Samurai Shodown 64 Warrior's Rage and Samurai Shodown Warrior's Rage. Now, Warrior's Rage could be found on PlayStation 1, and technically it's kind of a mix. It's not necessarily within the main timeline of 1 through 5, but it sits somewhere periodically in there. Samurai Shodown Warrior's Rage is the second fighting game, or the second Samurai Shodown fighting game that you can find on PlayStation 1. You can actually find Samurai Shodown 3 on PlayStation 1 as well. But from a Warrior Rage's perspective, this game was the 3rd 3D version on the game, while Samurai Shodown Sin was the 4th. This game has 24 playable characters and has plus 2 boss characters made playable in the console release. Of course, we didn't get that in the arcade version. If we're talking about in terms of platform and what this game looks like, this is virtually the same game that we saw on the Hyper Neo Geo 64. So it follows up with the original Samurai Shodown 64 on the same platform, and basically that re-release was done on PlayStation 1, and we saw a 2D version of a sequel of Warrior's Rage on Neo Geo Pocket Color. Also, you've got some things here, and in terms of it, I kind of think of this as like the side quest story conversation with Samurai Shodown Sin. This is a pretty cool game. You've got fatalities. They made it a little bit more realistic with the blood, being able to chop arms and heads off and things of that nature. But in terms of where you can find this game, you can find this game as an arcade, of course, and then also on Xbox 360. So if you haven't played this game and you're looking for an SNK Neo Geo style game on more modern consoles, I highly recommend adding this one to your 360 collection. Now, let me stop right here real quick. Is this the best Samurai Shodown? No, it is not. Could it use some work? Yes, it can. And that's why when we shift over into the Xbox One, you're going to see a more polished version of the next game. And we're going to move right into that right now. Samurai Shodown on Xbox One. We hadn't seen a Samurai Shodown for about 10 plus years, and we got to see one in 2019. And this bad boy came out of the gates. It was on the Unreal Engine. We got to see a more polished looking Samurai Shodown, and it looked phenomenal when this game dropped. You can play this on arcade, you can play it on Windows, you can play it on Switch, you could play it on PlayStation 4, Stadia, when they were still around, you could even play it on that, Xbox One, and we also received a enhanced version of this game on Xbox Series X and S, and we'll talk about that one in a minute. And then, of course, Android and iOS. You can find it on all those things. You can find this digitally, of course, and you can buy it online. Or, like I'm saying, at the end of the day, we're keeping it physical. Okay? See what I did there? Yeah. So the plot of this particular game takes place in between the time period of Samurai Shodown 5 and the original Samurai Shodown. So where we just talked about Samurai Shodown Sin and Samurai Shodown 64, where those storylines of those games were in a limbo, kind of their own little pocket story. This one in the 2019 version really just kind of sits us right smack back dab in the middle of Samurai Shodown 1 and Samurai Shodown 5 and says, hey, let's continue this story and move forward. Of course, the game takes place in 1787. We have to stop the evil entity at the end of the game. So there's 16 playable characters and extra ones available as a paid free content version. Now, this is where we talk into it. Now, we're talking about 5 games here. However, we could probably call this 5.5 because Samurai Shodown 2019 version and then the enhanced version was released a little bit longer. Now, this was an updated patch on the Samurai Shodown. In terms of the special edition for the enhancement, you're going to get all season passes. So you're going to get all 3 season passes. It's going to be patched to 2.1.0 if I'm not mistaken. And that's going to add, if you're playing on Xbox Series X, that's going to add 120 frames per second support and 4K support. So, and plus, here's the thing. If you just so happen to have the 2019 version, it automatically upgrades to that if you're shifting over. You can have it automatically shift over on Xbox. So if you just had the original Xbox version and then you shifted over into a Series X and then you want to do 4K and all that stuff, you can do the updated patch on that version as well. So that's kind of cool that they did that. So just so you remember that definitely increases your player count well over 20 different characters that you're going to be playing on this game. So If you're one to collect for physical games and you want to get both copies on physical, perfectly understandable. If you're just wanting to get the game to play, get the enhanced version. That's what I say to you, because you're going to have it. And if you can find it new, and you can still find it new in some places too, there's going to be some stores that still carry it, etc., brand new. But if you can't, it is what it is. You can always get the physical game, go online, and then download DLC, whatever. You could do it that way. But if you're lucky enough to find it brand new, still sealed somewhere out in some store, you know, left over at a Walmart, left over at a Target, whatever, which really at this point now, at the time of this video, we're not seeing too much of that anymore. So you may get lucky, you may not, but if you do find one that's brand new, then you're going to be able to get some extra characters on your roster, which would be cool. But that's definitely my recommend for Samurai Shodown. If you don't want to do the original 2019 version, get the enhanced edition. That way you can get your extra characters. And I highly recommend this one in your collection to have, because Samurai Shodown, they did a really good job with this game. So much so that when it originally dropped in 2019, it was critically acclaimed. It actually got a nomination at the Video Game Awards for a fighting game. So if that's telling you something, they did a really good job with this game. So if you haven't played it, check it out. And then lastly, another King of Fighters game. Why am I not surprised there's so many King of Fighters games? I told you, this is the 2K of fighting games. King of Fighters XIII. This game came out in 2022 and we found it on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Windows, Xbox Series X and S. And this is the current fighting game in the series going on to date as of the time of this video. So this is a more modern game. You can find this in every store that you find. You can find it at GameStop still. You can find it at, you know, some of your local stores. I'm not going to say it's at Walmart and Target and Best Buy because they're pulling games off the shelf. What can I say? This one follows in the tracks of the events of King of Fighters XIV. However, Xbox did not receive King of Fighters XIV. It was an exclusive on PlayStation. I don't know why Xbox, Microsoft didn't get it, but it is what it is. But we got to get the love for King of Fighters 15 on Xbox, and we love it, and it's still using the Unreal Engine 4. So we got to see the Unreal Engine 4 on Samurai Shodown. We're seeing it on King of Fighters, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see it on a few other games as well. But, you know, it involves and composed of 3 fighters, so we're still doing the standard, you know, 3-on-3 version of fightings. You have max EX versions, etc. So we're seeing a lot of the game mechanics that we saw from 13 and 14, and they're blending in a lot of those Street Fighter style mechanics now into King of Fighters 15. So this story kind of focuses on the King of Fighters tournament held prior on 14, and if you haven't played in terms of the story, I'm not going to spoil it for you. If you haven't played it, you should definitely check those games out. But in terms of characters, it launched with 39 playable characters, consisting of 13 different teams with 3 characters each. And then additional characters were made available via season passes. Of course, the ongoing motion for season passes, that's going to add new characters, new skins, etc. You know the drill. And we have Art of Fighting, Fatal Fury, Garo Mark of the Wolves, Samurai Shodown. You're going to see many of those teams. And some of these teams are through the DLC as well. So these are the top games, the 5.5-ish games that you can still find, because we would like to keep it physical. See what I did there? Huh? These are the games that you should add to your Xbox 360 and Xbox One collection. Now, I get it. These are all fighting games. You're like, Ness, bro, like, I'm not a big fighting game. I like, you know, RPGs. I like shooters. Does SNK do anything outside of fighting games on the modern console? Currently, not right now. But, you know, you've got some Metal Slug stuff that's going more mobile and things of that nature. So hopefully we'll see some more games. We'll see more support. SNK's got more stuff down the pipe. These games, do you have these in your collection? Have you played these games? Have you seen these games? Do any of these games interest you? Drop comments down below, let me know, and as always, collect and play the way that you want to collect and play your games, and we'll check you next time. Peace.